And we are back. Doing all right, everybody. Thanks for asking. Shaking my hand, okay? Voch, y'all know me. Bryan Broaddus over there. I mean, y'all kind of know Broaddus. What's up with you? Got a little guest here. We kind of do guests on Tuesdays. If we can't find a guest, it'll just be me and Bryan real boring. Like, we got Nick Harris here. Fort Worth Star Telegram, Nick Harris, DallasCowboys.com, and all anything else they need to know about?
That's good enough.
Nick Harris. All right, cool. Soon to be teammate Nick Harris. We ain't got to tell him what. Nick, man, we just have fun here on, doing all right. That's the name of the podcast, Voch and Bryan doing all right. And man, I just want to put you on a hot seat real fast, man.
All right, let's do it. Put me on.
First of all, let me say this, Nick Harris. Big fan of your work.
Thank you. Boy,
I
guess the first time we've done a show together. I'm a big fan of your work as well.
Oh, get ready. Here comes the compliment sandwich, though. He's about to hit you right upside the head.
It ain't no sandwich. Ain't no sandwich. I got questions. Ain't no sandwich. Man, I mean, Nick, man, you just do such a good job breaking down everything for the people, and you're very detail-oriented, Nick. Man, when I read your tweets, you don't waste words, man. You don't waste words with your tweets, You tell the people exactly what's happening. Boy, one tweet stuck out to me, man. You said the Cowboys announced Rico Dowdle came down, blah, 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 blah. But let me tell you the important part. Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star Telegram said he was seen in the tunnels, walking in the stadium looking fine and rapping along to a song he was listening to. Man, Nick, boy, just you seem like a very detail-oriented person, man.
Yep.
What was you trying to say with this line right here, man? What was you trying to say? I'm confused. I just wanted that. What that mean?
I'll walk you through my thought process whenever all of this came down, right? So we get the notification that he's listed as questionable with an illness, and I'm trying to think in the back of my head. I'm like, okay, what do I know from today that would be worthy knowledge for people to know, right? And instead, I saw him walking through the tunnels. He was rapping along with his headset on. He was just fine. I think he was rapping real Boston Richie. Like I remember the song. I remember everything walking down the tunnels. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, this must have been like an allergic reaction or something. So I was like, this must have been something that happened as soon as he got into the locker room. Because, I mean, just from my perspective, he looked fine. But also, I'm not a doctor. So that was my theory, was that, hey, it was an allergic reaction, or maybe he ate something that didn't sit right whenever he got in the locker room. That's what I meant by that sentence, for sure.
Man, Nick, there's a lot of Cowboy fans that think treachery's afoot.
Yeah, and I'm well aware.
And it was odd. It was just odd, that everybody kind of had this same idea that Rico and Zeke are the old guy. Neither one of them play teams. So in my mind, Dalvin and Zeke, they're the old dudes that don't play teams, and Rico's kind of like your one guy, right? And Hunter Lipke, he plays all the teams also. He's fullback, whatever. He's just here, but So in my mind, everybody thought that something would happen with Zeke, so that we can see what Dalvin Cook looks like. So removing your leading rusher and the best running back, we would all assume, it looked odd, Nick. It was just odd. And when I saw you say, looked fine to me, looked like he was rapping and dancing with his friends, it looked like I'm not putting words in your mouth, but what I read your tweet as, dog, Nick calling BS too, and I'm calling BS with him. So me and him are simpatico with calling BS right now, Nick. That's how I read it.
I understand that. I understand that how that probably came across, but it was truthfully like I was thinking maybe he had an allergic reaction or something like that. I honestly didn't even think about the possibility of BS until after comments started flowing in, and I was like, oh, this does kind of look like I'm saying that, doesn't it? But it's whatever. I can only say my words.
What you think gonna happen next week? How do you think this whole running back thing is gonna play? I mean, Rico can't be sick 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, it'll be Dalvin elevated, and then Rico and Zeke will be active. That's my expectation.
I asked you today, Nick, on the break, and I love being your teammate. Love being your teammate on the break. I love being your teammate on the draft show. Absolutely love your work on all that. I asked you about if you thought this Dalvin Cook was a one-off thing, and you said no, this is not. I mean, you can't get an idea about Dalvin Cook, but I understand Dalvin Cook playing or getting the opportunity, but is this something with Zeke continually getting opportunities? Is this a front office move? I'm just asking your opinion on this. Is this a front office move, or is this the coaching staff really thinking like, okay, Ezekiel Elliott gives us the best chance to win games each week?
Are you saying Ezekiel Elliott over Rico Dowdle?
Well, over Rico Dowdle or being active, I could say, to me, we all believe on this show that, and again, Voch, I'm sorry, I don't mean, we think that Rico Dowdle is, your best back, your best option and all those things. But, the fact that Ezekiel, that they can't seem to sit him, to get Dalvin Cook up and then to make sure it's Rico, it's Dalvin Cook, it's Hunter Lipke. And now you got all your pieces for what you want to do offensively and your special teams, you take care of all that. But do you think this is the front office encouraging Mike McCarthy and the staff to keep Zeke active?
I can kind of communicate what's been communicated to me from the coaching staff as far as the difference between Zeke and Dalvin, because if you decipher a difference between the two, then that kind of opens up the lane for why you activate both of them, right? Because if they were the same carbon copy, then why would you have both of them? They see a difference. The difference is they see Dalvin Cook as their best outside zone runner on the roster. They see Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle as guys between the tackles that can kind of get in that muddy area and make some things happen. So they still want to see the Dalvin Cook outside zone stuff. And they tried to do it a couple of times against the Niners, didn't quite work out. I think it was 6 carries, 19 yards, something like that. And they still want to see more work there against Atlanta, especially against a defensive line that is reeling right now, not only in pass rush, but also in the run defense area of things too. If they are deciphering that difference, then I expect both of them to be active, because let's say that outside zone stuff is not working early in the game and they kind of just have to go away from it. They can still fall on Rico and still fall on Zeke in pass protection situations as well. And that way, if Zeke is inactive, then they still have to bring Dalvin in for pass protection situations and things like that. So that's why I expect all three to be active. I think they all three have a purpose against Atlanta if it comes down to it.
I don't want to say this in a very nice way, because I think that coach is BSing you a little bit. I think if you're looking for like a short distance runner, I think Lipke does that a little better. If you're looking for like an outside zone runner, I would say that Rico and Dalvin probably do that a little better than Zeke. I think if you're looking for like a pass catcher, I think Dalvin's best play was like pass catching last week.
Yeah.
And Rico's a guy that we've seen, just throw him a screen and just – I think Rico's gotten touchdowns, just catching passes, running screen, all this kind of stuff. Nick, we have this thing here. I would love to know your opinion on it.
Yeah.
I call it rollover seniority or rollover respect, right? This idea that, Zeke did something very fantastic for this franchise and that he and the owner, general manager are forever connected at the hip, because the owner, general manager love his players, especially these, highly touted, players and all that. And, hey, maybe there was this brown paper bag deal under the table. And I ain't saying you saying this. This is Voch saying this. This brown paper bag deal, the same kind of deal that a Jason Witten would get, right? Maybe a player that's not as good as some of the young guys on the roster, but hey, man, I love the hell out of Zeke, so that's why. Because when I see Zeke, I mean, I don't see a lot of positivity. Zeke probably had his best rushing game last week. I think your line blocked pretty cool on those plays, but even when Zeke got hit, Zeke got another 3 or so yards. I'm like, all right, cool. Do that, but Zeke doesn't do that a whole bunch. In my mind, I think the other 3 running backs do a little better, but I think there's some sort of rollover seniority going on.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the case. And Jerry had spoken so much about how he loved his receiving work that he did in New England, but where has that been? Where's that been in the offense? We haven't seen Zeke get involved in the receiving game at all. And if that was really hammering home for Jerry Jones and he was getting in the middle of personnel meetings every week when it came to the running back position, then where did Zeke's touches go? How did that kind of happen in the middle of all that? I think in the beginning, I think you might be onto something there, Voch. I think whenever the talk really started to heat up around bringing Ezekiel Elliott back, I think there were conversations happening behind the scenes as, hey, we don't need to draft a running back. We got Ezekiel Elliott coming back. Right. And then whenever they did get Ezekiel Elliott back, they realized that he was not the Ezekiel Elliott that left that building 2 years ago. And now they're kind of having to work with the scraps a little bit. And so I think that's probably more so where it came into play, because, man, you look at these backs that are having good years so far.
Ray Davis, Garindo, all these guys.
Tyrone Tracy. These are all guys that the Cowboys had shots at, and they didn't jump after. And whenever we would ask Jerry Jones after every single day, hey, what's the plan at running back? Hey, what's the plan at running back? Right. A name that would always get brought up was Ezekiel Elliott. And we didn't ask Ezekiel Elliott. We were asking about drafting running back. So I think that's more so when that came into play.
Let me ask
Nick,
you this.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Voch. Go ahead.
kind of in that same mode, but I know it's kind of different, right? You know, Zeke's not getting paid a ton of money, right? But when we look at the safeties, right, Donovan's making a little bit of bread, so it'll be weird to kind of be like, hey, whatever, you know, Malik is technically making a little bit of bread, right? So it's weird to be like, nah. If we really want to get the best guys involved, what's kind of stopping this Wanye Marquise Bell thing from happening? You know, I applaud the idea that this team was looking kind of weird, and then Wanye showed a little bit of toughness. Then all of a sudden we just got some contagious toughness out of nowhere. What's stopping those guys from getting on the field? If you've heard anything.
Yeah, I don't think anything now. I think getting Wanye involved against the Niners was kind of the first step in things moving in that direction. I talked about it on the break this morning, Brian, so sorry if it's a broken record here, but these crossing patterns have been tearing up this defense all 7 games. I mean, you could look at every single big passing play that has been that has happened against this defense. I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head that wasn't a crossing pattern was Rashid Shaheed, and he was still attacking the safeties. So I think when you look at that problem, and especially how Kittle was able to dominate against Wilson on Sunday in those same type of situations, it made sense to get Wanye involved. Now, how does Marquise Bell factor into that eventually? I think in run defense, you know, if you start to see Donovan Wilson slip in run defense as he did in the first 3-4 weeks, then I think you could possibly see a Marquise Bell type situation as well. I think we are trending towards a situation, I think, going into 2025 where they have to make a hard look in the mirror at these safeties and ask if they have the best 2 guys on the field.
Yeah, I know, Nick, you know, in visiting with the coaches at training camp, they really love Donovan Wilson. I mean, they could not say enough good things about Donovan Wilson until all of a sudden Donovan Wilson had to cover, you know. And let me ask you this. Do you think that they went with Wanye Thomas because of just that reason, a little bit better coverage or a little bit more confidence in coverage over, say, what they get from Bell?
Yeah, a little bit more confidence in coverage, not only just in coverage in general, but against George Kittle specifically. He brings a little bit more fight there.
Yeah, I thought so too. You know, and this is when you watch there. You're right. 7 games. This is one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to defending the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. You know, and you wonder why that. You know, but you wonder about the safety play too. It just, you know, the some of the angles, the missed tackles. You know, they can't live with that anymore. They just can't live with that.
And I think you go back to Mike Zimmer's availability yesterday. It didn't seem like he was in the best of moods in general during his availability yesterday, but he was asked almost right off the top about the safety play. And he said, I'm not going to evaluate the safeties for the media. And he just left it at that. I followed up a little bit later about the crossing patterns, and he also made that short. Yeah. Those were the 2 shortest answers that he had in that availability, which leads me to believe that he's also putting this inability to cover the middle of the field on the safeties. And so it's got to be something that's looked at really hard, especially going into a week like this against Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod. These are guys that can get it open across the middle of the field. Bijan Robinson. This is going to have to take a hard look in the mirror this week.
Crowd favorite Jerry Jones when asked about bringing some players in to kind of help out a little bit. Jerry was like, man, I don't even know where you find these guys, man. Where they at? Where the players at? And boy, a lot of your peers there, your other 31 peers, are finding a way to bring guys in to make their team a little better. And you know, your quarterback was harkening back to the 2018 season where the Cowboys was looking a little weird, and you bring in Amari Cooper, and all of a sudden we just kind of boom a little bit. I don't think we're one player away. No. We're not an Amari Cooper away, right? But it doesn't feel like there's going to be any movement around the trade deadline, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel that way. I mean, we're looking up. I believe it's November 5th this time this year. So we got about a week left before the deadline, and there's not a lot of whisper. I like very quietly checked in, and there wasn't much to kind of run with today. So that's at least early on, and it doesn't sound like they're going to be making any type of big moves. But, you know, you mentioned, hey, they're not even one player away. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It kind of sucks because you look back at 2023, Dexter Lawrence was available, you know, and he got sent somewhere. Yeah. You could look at some other positions of need, and those guys were available on the market. So if you've just been a little bit more proactive throughout the years, you may have had a Dexter Lawrence in there in the middle of this year. You could have had so-and-so here in this position. And then you are only maybe one player away or an Amari Cooper away from being a team. But that's unfortunately not the case.
So what the hell are we going to do then, Nick Harris?
Yeah.
What the hell are we going to do about this? How do we fix this thing? Like how much change needs to happen? Because I personally feel like you're maybe a small change on offense and a big Mike McCarthy change away from being fine on offense. And, defense, if you get a little healthy and maybe one change here. Because, look, I can trade a 5th and a 6th with somebody. I got some 5th and 6th in my pocket somewhere. You know what I mean? And they don't have to be – sure, they don't have to be these game-breaking type prospects, man. But I can't find a one-tech nowhere. I can't find a cheap little running back nowhere. One of these rookies that y'all really don't want, that's y'all 5th running back or something like that. We can't find help nowhere, Nick Harris.
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me either. I'm just as dumbfounded as you.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, I was going to ask you this question, and coming out of Oxnard, I think a lot of people were excited about the prospects of Jake Ferguson, and the prospects of maybe with Jalen Tolbert. And I know that Cook got hurt, so you haven't really had a much of him, but is there a disappointment or a scratch in your head moment about really what's going on with the second wide receiver and what's going on with tight end 1? It doesn't seem like that they've got what they might have thought they were going to get the bang of their buck for at least through the halfway point of the season with those two players.
I think the scratch of the head more so falls on play calling rather than personnel. I think there's still a lot of trust in those guys. Specifically Tolbert and Ferguson. Those are two guys that have continued to have a lot of guys speak on their behalf over the course of the last couple of weeks. We saw the Tolbert breakout game against Pittsburgh. Haven't really matched that since, but he's going to have to continue to kind of elevate and be that second reliable option for Dak, even when Cooks does come back. But Jake Ferguson specifically, I think seeing the injury in week 1 and them trying to be a little bit cautious with it in those first couple of games that he had back, I think you have to have a full send with Jake Ferguson or you don't send him at all. I think it's also a product of them not having a reliable tight end behind him. All trust has been lost in Luke Schoonmaker with his staff. I'm pretty confident in saying that. He played, I believe, a handful of snaps against the Niners, under 5, if I believe, off the top of my head. Brevin Spanford has almost completely taken over his responsibilities, talking about Schoonmaker, so much so that they even tried to use him in a red zone situation last week. And what did he have, like 17 receptions as a senior at Minnesota? So it's like, they're trying to go in different ways at tight end behind Jake Ferguson. And so Ferguson's having to do a lot that does not involve pass catching, that does not involve him, being that vertical threat that he was at times last year. All those seam routes that we saw last year with Dak and Jake Ferguson. I can only think of one off the top of my head that's happened this season, and it was before he got hurt. So it's I question the play calling a lot. That's where I factor in the play calling being the scratch in the head part.
Nick, let me ask you this. I'm old enough to remember when Jerry and his Illuminati members or his evil bodyguard people put his arm around Jason Garrett, like, look, Jason, we love you as a head coach, but this little play calling stuff that you're doing, you can't do both. And I'm making the executive stepping on it, Jerry Jones decision that you can't call plays anymore. And maybe Jason didn't like it, but I think it was for the best. Do you think Jerry Jones even knows that the play call look a little weird? Do you think, like, we're in week what, 8, 9, something like that?
9, yeah.
We're in week 9 and our offense been looking kind of weird for a minute now. Nothing close to what it looked like. What's stopping Brother Jerry and his Illuminati bodyguard people from going, yo, Mike? And I agree. I actually don't mind Mike as a head coach type character. Keep your guys healthy, GPS numbers, all that little cool. But you can't call plays for me anymore because you've proven to me that in the biggest of moments, and hell, all year this year, you kind of tighten up a little bit and go back to that little nonsense that you run, this old man Flintstone offense you run. Nick, what's stopping Jerry from putting his arm around Mike?
Just to clarify my point here, this is my personal take.
Just what you think. You're not reporting nothing all night. This is just what you think. Please.
Yeah, this is my personal take here. I think it's a situation where Jerry's looking at it and Mike's going to be gone next year. And it's hey, we're going to let him ride it out for 10 games. If he finds something, he finds something. And then we can lean on him in the future potentially. If he doesn't find anything, then it's easy to move on.
Yeah. You know what, we had this discussion this morning, Voch, and I asked the one thing, give me one thing, and I'll ask you, because I did ask Nick this morning on the break, and I thought he gave a really good answer, but I'll ask you this question. What is one thing that you would do to this football team to make it better that they won't do? And I'll tell you what I said.
Sure.
I said change the play caller. I said let Brian Schottenheimer call plays.
That's my answer.
Is what I said.
That's my answer.
Yeah.
That's my bona fide answer, Brian. Because if you look at it, right, like talent wise, I don't think we're too far from last year, like kind of sort of talent. I think Jalen Tolbert is better than what you got from Gallup last year, right? Cooks has been hurt. You know, he can always get healthy and figure all that kind of little stuff out, but he still finished the season as a touchdown getting guy, right? So in my mind, I really think that we're play calling away. Right? Like we're just a good play calling game away. And when it came down to Pittsburgh, I think we called plays pretty well. We just had turnovers and red zone woes. I don't think it's the plays necessarily. Even if you look at San Fran, right? We have the ability to do some cool shit on offense. Nick, we can cuss here. You have the ability to do some cool shit on offense, and we saw it in San Fran, but we can't keep doing it. Why don't we keep doing it? Why don't we consistently do this cool shit that we're doing to march down the field, to march? I think it was Matt LaFleur came out of something like that. We're like, yeah, man, we just saw something early in the week and early in the day, and we just kind of bootlegged it on the sideline and figured it out, and we just ran it. Why don't we steal plays? Ben Johnson still plays. He come out and tell you that we steal plays. We act like we can't steal plays. We act like we can't do all the cool, fun offensive stuff, or at least the stuff we did last year. I think if you just put your arm around the shoulder, Mike McCarthy, if you just give play calling to someone else, I think the plays are fine. Give the play calling to someone else and let Ford do Ford things. I think you'll see a massive jump.
Is Brian Schottenheimer the best option for you there?
On the roster?
Are you thinking about maybe the Boston College coach?
Not Shimko. I'm honestly, hear me out here. I'm thinking not necessarily Dak being the play caller, but Dak having a lot of the responsibility.
I like it. I like it.
I think more responsibility could be put in the hands of Dak Prescott. I mean, he's your $60 million guy. He's going to be the guy you're going to have here for the foreseeable future. Sure. He's the one that needs a run game beside him to operate. So if he does not have that, give him the keys and try to let him figure it out then, you know? So I think there needs to be a little bit more synchronization between McCarthy and Dak. We saw a lot of that towards the end of last year, especially after the bye week. Dak kind of had an increased role in the offense. Sure. But I think there kind of needs to be another step here.
Okay, let me tell you this, what I think. And you guys shoot me down on this idea here. When every time that we ever talked with Dak as he was coming up through the ranks, we always thought, well, maybe he's the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then, maybe he's the 10th, 11th, 12th best quarterback in the league. They always had him with Goff, Stafford. They were always in that group, those that line up together. And this is my thought. This is my hope for Dak Prescott. What did those guys do when they got with better play callers? They separated themselves. Sure. Goff separated himself. Stafford, Goff was with McVay, but I think McVay kind of figured some things out with Goff along the way. Like, well, okay, maybe this might not. Yeah, maybe I'm not the best. I think McVay is a much better play caller now than what he was when he had Goff. Yeah. And so to me, this is my hope, that if you put Dak with a legitimate play caller, somebody like what we talk about, Ben Johnson, McVay, Shanahan, somebody like that. We talked about all these quarterbacks as the same dudes. They were all 8, 9, and 10. They were stacked in there like Parcells used to say, club sandwiches, and now they've all kind of separated. Why? Because their play caller's better. That's what this quarterback really needs. Now, in 4 years, all of a sudden you hire a new coach, new play caller, and it doesn't work. Then you know what? You have known that it was always the quarterback. It was always the quarterback. It never was really the play caller. It was always the quarterback. I want to believe that if you had somebody that can elevate his game, like what we've seen with McVay elevate even old man, old man quarterback out there at the Rams, Stafford out there, Goff, look at Goff. Goff doesn't miss a pass now. I mean, he didn't miss a pass. you know? And there was a time where it's like, get him outside, get him in cold weather. He hates blitz pickup. He can't do, you know. He looks like a different dude playing because of this guy. Now, they got good personnel, but this is my hope. Shoot holes in my hope that if a better play caller would come in here, it would help Dak.
You absolutely right.
You're 100%. I think you're 100%, and also a running game. A running game that has a life. You look at Goff; he's got those two guys, and David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs. You look at Kirk Cousins.
They laughed at him. They laughed at the Lions. They laughed at the Lions. They're the Lions taking running backs again. You know, oh look, remember when they took receivers and got Matt Millen fired? Yeah, we're all laughing right now as those two dudes. When those guys score, both those guys score a touchdown in a game, they're like 30-0 or something like that. You know, I mean. Yeah.
When you see these other quarterbacks, Bryan Broaddus, it just looks so easy. Like it's just the offense is just a well-oiled machine, and we look like we just fighting for our life out there, man. We just running down the field and turning around. I actually feel like Dak is playing some of the best football in his life right now because of the nonsense that he's having to actually play with. Like we're actually moving the ball regardless of the nonsense that's being called right now. So yeah, Bryan, you 100% correct. We should have a new. Go ahead, please.
No, I'm just saying that I'm not trying to stand up for the guy. I'm just saying that's my hope because I've seen other quarterbacks that have always been talked about him in the same area. Well, give me quarterback 8, 9, 10. Well, Stafford, Goff, Dak, the guy out in the Chargers. They're all the same, you know, but what's the difference? These guys, they elevate their game because they've got dynamic play callers. Sure. They got guys that know how to move receivers, have a running game, how to create opportunities. You know, you don't have that with this guy. Now, Dak needs to not throw damn interceptions anymore. Sure. You know, that mess that happened to him 2 years ago, that was half on him and half on the receivers tipping the ball around and making foolish routes and stuff. A lot of this, what's happening right now is him. Needs to stop that right now is what he needs to do.
You look at some of these interceptions, and I'm going to do more of a breakdown on these interceptions later in the week. I'm planning on. But you look at the first one against San Francisco, you can attribute that to a protection issue. Could he have pushed it out of bounds? Absolutely. But you can attribute that to a protection issue. Think back to the Jalen Brooks interception against the New Orleans Saints where he slipped and it fell right into the hands of, I think it was either a Debo or
it's Debo. Yeah.
It's you know, there has been opportunities where he's put the ball where it needs to be, and it's been somebody else that's puts the play into disarray, and it made it a turnover-worthy opportunity. Still, at the end of the day, Dak has 16 turnover-worthy plays so far this season in only 8 games. Yeah. His career high is 21. Yeah, he is well on his way to exceeding that. So there's got to be some sort of refreshment from Dak, and I think personally, it's extending plays with his legs. We haven't seen that, and
he can't. There's something about, and you know, a lot of folks, and I'm not trying to be a guy that know everything about medical stuff and everything like that, but we all kind of like Dak walking around in a boot, you know, before the training camp, pictures of all that, and everybody's like, "Oh no, man, we're good, everything's okay," you know, don't worry about it. He doesn't look. He obviously he does not want to run with the football. He does not want to. You know, and I'll tell you what, the 3rd and 5 play that they handed to Hunter Lipke, go back and watch him if he pulls that ball where that thing ends up. Oh, for sure. He might be bumping his head on the goalpost. You know, I mean that. You know, he pulls that ball. He's got a blocker in front. It's a first down. Okay, get me 7 yards. Fall down. I don't care. Just get me the first down. But you know, his unwillingness to run now is cost him in some opportunities, you know. And Jerry comes on our station 105.3 The Fan is telling us, well, you know, those quarterbacks, some of those young guys run, some of those guys get hurt.
Crazy.
That cat at Washington, the way he runs around right now and throws the ball, that is a weapon. That guy you played in week 4, week 3, whatever that was when you played the Ravens, that guy is a weapon playing that way.
Let me ask you, you know, win or lose, this offseason is going to see a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
Correct. Like roster.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
And if it's a situation where he's starting to see this ship go downward, why would you put yourself at risk in certain situations? You know, he can think back to 2020. When
That's fair. That's fair.
50 yards per game. And I'm not putting this on Dak. And if I'm putting words into Dak's mouth or putting intention into Dak's, you know, aura, then, you know, I apologize. But I mean, you look at the situation and what they have in front of them. They're 3-4, and it's a product of what they have on the field. And what they have on the field is very average. This is a very average football team. And I think if he's trying to maximize what his next 4 years in Dallas looks like, he needs to be healthy for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just kind of thought maybe that, that there was going to be, I've always believed this about Dak, and I still do. I always felt like when he was bloodied and muddied, that's when he was playing his absolute best. Yeah. When Dak got a feel of the game, and I don't know now, I see that look sometimes after a turnover. It's, you're like, man, he didn't see that, or he knew he made a mistake there, but I could say you're right. He might be looking at this situation. They probably don't trust the offensive line. He knows he has no running game. He probably feels like he's got one receiver out there. Even though he talks about Tolbert like a loving brother.
And not to continue on this point, sorry, Voch, if I'm hijacking here. He's taken more hits in these first 7 games than he has in his entire career through these first 7 games. It's been bad. Sure. He's taking a lot of hits right now, and so that could also just be a product of that body, of that wear and tear on that body over the course of the last seven games. He had a big swell on the side of his ribcage after that game against 49ers, and it was off of that hit that he threw down the left sideline to Turpin. So it's taking a toll.
Man, Nick Harris, man, just put me out of my misery, man. We feel like I feel like Mike McCarthy getting fired regardless, but
we talking draft?
not it'll be sooner than later, but
it'll be soon.
Man, Jerry Jones said he'll pay whatever it takes to get a Super Bowl up in here, man. But man, I can't help but to feel like we not smart enough to do that, man. I think a lot of these young coaches that we want to come up in here, I think they're too young for Jerry Jones. I think we up here I think we're gonna talk about Ben Johnson all week, all year. Mm-hmm. I think he's gonna get up in here, and I think he's gonna leave and go somewhere else because Jerry wants somebody with skins on the wall. We're gonna settle for some old man. Nick, that sounds about right?
It does. It does sound about right, and it kind of feels like whether it's trying to pin draft picks or pin future head coaches, feels like whatever feels like the for sure thing never actually happens with this team. Jonathan Brooks was the running back last year, the whole draft process. The Cowboys are going to get him. And I feel like that's happening with Genty right now. They're not going to get Genty, So it's I feel like it's a Ben Johnson situation with the head coach position as well.
I'll ask you a draft question. We ain't doing nothing else. Let me ask you this. Voch says this. You just drafted a one tech. Very, very recent. Very, very recently you just drafted this one tech, man.
Yeah.
What's the balance between, all right, man, tackles normally don't just – unless they top 5 picks or something like that. Tackles just really don't, come out the pack whooping the ass like that. But, man, we run out of time, man. So what's the outlook between drafting one of these, maybe a Michigan defense tackle, honestly? How do you feel about drafting one of these guys as soon as you just drafted Mozzie 2 years ago? Like, how does that
feel? I tell you what, he needs to work on pad level a little bit, but Deion Walker is a MFer. I don't know if I can get away with that cuss word on here, but I'm gonna say that.
He's a mother.
You can.
He's a dude, and I love his explosion. I love his punch. I love his power. He's probably more powerful than any one tech in this class. But specifically, I think when it comes to the situation of comparing him to Mozzie Smith, he gets off the ball. He's explosive, and they need a guy that can play side to side in running lanes, and that's what Deion Walker can do. So I love Deion Walker. That's kind of been my guy so far.
I don't know who that is.
I tell you what, there's to me with this draft, if say they're picking somewhere, say they just throw out there they're going to pick at 10. Just say that, okay? They're picking at 10. I'm of the belief they could draft any position and it'll help their team.
Sure. I agree. Yeah.
I mean, you could say you could talk about defensive tackle, but you could look at you could say who is that best player on the board at 10. And in any position, it might they might not be the quarterback. It might be the quarterback. You want to draft a quarterback, feel free.
Tackle,
but yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Do you think they wouldn't? You don't think they would take a tackle?
I would take a tackle, but they don't do what makes sense, Bryan Broaddus. That's what I'm talking about. like if it's a stud tackle that's there, they'll go some other direction. And be like, oh yeah, Terrence Steele's the future. They'll do it.
if they're picking in the top 10, one of those big three, which I'm considering a big three now, are going to be available at tackle. Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, and Ariante Ursary from Minnesota. One of those three guys will be available there if you're picking at 10. But you could also look at Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona as a receiver. They haven't had a big possession receiver consistently since Dez Bryant. You could make the argument for Michael Gallup, but I'm talking consistently. And Tetairoa McMillan makes sense. You could look at a safety guy who has experience playing everywhere in the secondary, and Malachi Starks out of Georgia. There's going to be options there for these guys.
Man, the thing you said, Will Campbell from LSU, and I've seen him play since he's a freshman. There's things that scare me about Will Campbell.
He's starting to slip. He wasn't the for sure number one tackle going into the year.
Yeah, there's some.
I always like Kelvin a little bit more, but I think Kelvin might actually be a guard. But that's neither here.
Oh no, there's going to be some nights where all three of us are going to be at each other's throats talking about these guys. I'll say this about Will Campbell: I would have, and not knowing the board like the board right now, and we'll all learn the board here in a few months.
For sure.
But Will Campbell just watching LSU play every week. And hang on to your ass. You know what I'm saying? Hang on to your ass. Yeah, he could be great, and other times it could be a little bit challenging for him to play. So
only reason I know him, Brian, because I was watching Verse last year, and I was like, boy, Verse is beating the hell out of this left tackle from LSU. So when somebody said, oh yeah, he might be tackle one, I'm like, him? So I got to watch film and catch up a little bit.
No, man, I tell you what, this will be exciting though. But yeah, I do believe that they're open to taking. When we start to talk about the draft shows and stuff, and we start to talk about these players, it's going to be like you could latch in and say, okay, they're looking at the best defensive tackle, they're looking for the best offensive tackle, they're looking at the best running back. They're really looking at every position. There's nothing. I don't think there's nothing that they can draft. I mean, you say quarterback, but I don't think there's a position that they couldn't draft that wouldn't help this team.
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you.
Let me get one more in, and then we'll get you up out of here. I'm just going back to my notes. I had this written down, circled, and underlined. You said something a little earlier. You was talking about Luke and the coaches, like, tight end number 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the hell Luke Schoolmaker is now. You said the coaches, I don't want to put words in because I forgot what you said already, but you was like the coaches ain't really feeling Luke. What you mean? Like, when you think that happened? You think they're out on Luke already? You think that second round draft equities run out already? What's going on with that?
I think that transition started to happen right around Ravens, Giants, that type of part of the season. It's more so just looking at the tea leaves and seeing that he only played a handful of snaps against the 49ers, and that situations where he would be in the game, and it's been undrafted Brevin Spanford instead. And so I think it's Schoonmaker used by necessity at this point. They've even thrown Hunter Lipke into pass catching situations where it would have been Schoonmaker in the past. So I mean that's just looking at what's happened on the field.
If I can ask one more question, Voch, here, I appreciate, and thank you so much, Nick, for being on with us, man.
Anytime.
Such a wealth of knowledge. But I want to get one more question out of you, if I could. What's the tightrope that this front office has to walk if things really start to kind of fall apart? And I know they're kind of teetering on that right now. We're at that fork in the road. But what if things really get to the point where you have 5 or 6 losses in a row, and then it turns into, okay, we need to play this guy, or we need to play this guy from the front office? What kind of reaction do you think, or how do they handle that with the coaching staff? You're already playing young guys because of injury. You're already playing a lot of young guys. But where does it turn into, well, hey, we need to see what Awesome Richards can do? Or, hey, we need to see what this guy can do. How do they navigate that if this thing gets really off the rails?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for it. I really don't. And this would be just more so me theorizing again. If it's a situation where we look up and this team is 3-9, 4-10, wherever you want to be, and there's only 3, 4, 5 games left on the schedule, you have to start doing what's best for the team as a coaching staff. And what's best for the team at that point is figuring out what you need in the draft, and it's figuring out what you need in the offseason. And to figure out what you need to figure out what you have. And that's a situation where you throw Awesome Richards in, you throw Tyler Guyton at right tackle, you put Tyler Smith at left. I mean, you start playing with everything because you need to figure out what you need to go grab this offseason.
Do you even think about playing Trey Lance at that point?
I'd be playing Trey Lance now. I would be using him in the Taysom Hill role right now.
Sure, I understand. But if you get down to December, and as you mentioned, it's the season's lost. See, that's as a former front office guy, this is the problem that I would have. I need to see things, and you guys are trying to win games. Mm-hmm. But I know we're not going to win games. But I need to see Awesome Richards play. I need to see others get opportunities here. I need to see Leofau play a lot more. I need to see Carson play a lot more. I mean, I know Carson's been banged up and probably could be playing, but this is the problem that I would run into is like, how do you tell a coaching staff to play players when they're trying to win games at the end? Does it matter?
They're doing it now with Zeke, Bryan Broaddus. They are trying to run the football and they're making Zeke run so they're doing it right now, Bryan.
They have been doing it since game one. That is a fact. But I think if you're 3-9 and 4-10, is the biggest focus winning games at that point, even for the coaching staff.
No, I know, but that's what they're thinking. Like they're probably looking at this. Yeah, we're going to be fired. But where is their resolve, or where is their to try and help you look at these players? Where is their they're like, hey, screw you. Yeah. We're all hunting jobs right now.
I think. They're the position coaches on this team, and when I say this, I think of a few guys specifically. I think of Al Harris. I think of
pride. Have a lot of pride.
I think of Robert Prince. I think of Solari. These are all guys that love the entirety of their rooms. And if these young guys are going to get an opportunity to play in regular season games down the stretch, they'll be fine with that. And McCarthy's one of those guys too. I mean, look at Brevin Spanford, look at Hunter Lipke, look at Carson. I mean, these are guys that this staff has been willing to play. They would have had a chance to go get Amani Oruwariye before starting Kalen Carson, but they wanted to start the rookie. So because they want to see what their development and what their coaching has put into these guys. So I think it would be a product of the same exact thing. Because if let's say they do put Awesome Richards at left guard and put Tyler Smith out to left tackle, and Awesome Richards kicks ass, then they can go into the offseason. Let's say that they're fired. Awesome Richards is a notch on their belt being like, hey, I had this guy the whole time. They didn't know they had. So I think it's still an opportunity for the coaching staff to be able to find some things.
To finish with some pride and stuff like that. Yeah. I just, to me, I mean, you wonder what the buy-in is at that point. There's some coaches that are probably, but
it's low.
It's really like, well, okay, we're all effed here anyway, and now the front office is asking us to play Awesome Richards at guard and move Guyton to right tackle and all that stuff. You know,
Bryan Broaddus, one day we're gonna come up in here and play a game of which player is new coach proof. I don't think.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
I don't think it matters what Awesome Richards can do. I don't think he's new coach proof. I don't think a new coach will come and see him and be like, oh, let's see what the Richards kid. Some young guys, I think I think a new coach see Overshown and be like, all right, don't touch him at all. Leave him right where he's at. But there's gonna be a new coach that'll see, some miscellaneous character on the team right now, and they'll go, yeah, we'll move on. So we'll actually play that game one day, Bryan Broaddus, and I think it'll be interesting to see what you think. Maybe Nick Harris will come back one day and kick it with us. We'll see.
Absolutely, anytime. This is great. Anytime, guys.
This has been a fantastic pod. We appreciate everybody for tapping in. Appreciate Nick Harris for coming through. We'll all be teammates in some capacity moving forward. So y'all just keep
getting close, man. Getting close.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
We keep losing shit. Hey, y'all follow me on my socials, Voch Lombardi. You know me. You follow Nick Harris. I know some letters on yours. Nick Harris, what it is?
FWST, 4-star Telegram.
4-star Telegram. There you go. And BRY getting Broaddus. He'll be answering questions in the morning and in the comments on this video. All right. We'll catch y'all next time. Crown.